All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Kliff Kingsbury backing out of the Raiders job, joining the Commanders, and some of the other coaching hires that happened as well. So, yeah, Kingsbury was supposed to join the Raiders, be their next OC, but then he backed out of the job. So then the Raiders they ended up hiring Luke Getsky to be their next offensive coordinator, and he was the OC the last two seasons with the Bears. The Bears fired him in January. So, I mean, again, I don't really know much about a lot of these coordinators. I know the Bears, they kind of, towards the end of the season, they looked like a much better team. I mean, starting off the year, they just looked so flat. I mean, Justin Fields was talking about, how he felt like he was a robot out there in the beginning, and obviously he got hurt. You had Tyson Bagent playing a couple of games, during the year. But then once Fields came back, the offense looked better. They almost beat the Lions twice. I mean, the second time they really did beat them down. And they looked like a different team. And with the Raiders, it's going to be different because, we'll see what they end up doing at quarterback. But the Raiders, they played much better once they switched over to Antonio Pierce after they let go of Josh McDaniels. So, we'll see what ends up happening at the quarterback position because I don't think Aiden O'Connell is the answer. It's definitely not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see what the Raiders end up doing there. That was a bad contract. And I feel bad for Jimmy Garoppolo. I just feel like injuries have kind of, really impacted his career. And it just didn't help him this year. And also turning the ball over. The offense just was not clicking with him. It's not like Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell was definitely better. But again, he was more of a game manager for them this year. But, listen, the Raiders, they, bring back Josh Jacobs or they let him go and let Zamir White maybe take over the lead role because we saw what he looked like, when Jacobs was out. You still got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. They got weapons on this team. So, they just got to figure out the quarterback position. But, yeah, it's really interesting with Kingsbury. He backs out of the Raiders job. Like, the contract negotiations fell through. Because, they announced the deal. Well, they announced that he was going to the Raiders, but it's like the deal wasn't done yet. But it seemed like, that it was going to end up happening. And then he just ended up leaving and joining the Commanders. He was a part of he was a offensive analyst, it says here, with USC. I thought it was, I guess, offensive analyst, offensive coordinator. So working with Caleb Williams, obviously. And Adam Schefter did tweet, about, let the, the theories, begin, or the speculation begin on, the fact that Kingsbury joins Washington. Washington has the number 2 pick in the draft. And obviously Caleb Williams congratulated him on his job in Washington. Can Washington somehow end up with Caleb Williams? Well, when we get into our next segment, that might not be the case because the Bears, they apparently are going to stick. They're going to stay at the number 1 pick. So that might mean, they could take him, or maybe they surprise everybody and they take somebody else. But that's where we're at right now. Listen, Kliff Kingsbury, he's worked with Caleb Williams. He's worked with Patrick Mahomes back with Texas Tech. He's worked with Kyler Murray. So we'll see now him coming over to Washington, what they end up doing at quarterback, who they end up bringing in. But it's just a very interesting situation because, again, you thought, okay, he's going to be with the Raiders. Then all of a sudden he just decides, I'm just going to back out. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the deal was with that. Also, some other coordinator news. So you had the Saints. They hired Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. He is the son of former Broncos and Texans head coach Gary Kubiak. Obviously, Kubiak was a part of the Super Bowl 50 winning Denver Broncos. He spent this season as the 49ers passing game coordinator under Kyle Shanahan, which Obviously, he's going to continue to do that until after the Super Bowl. And he has OC experience from his time with the Vikings in 2021. Kubiak was Minnesota's QB coach from 2019 to 2020 and served as the Broncos passing game coordinator under Nathaniel Hackett in 2022. The Saints dismissed Pete Carmichael after the 2023 season. And it mentions it here how Derek Carr and the offense actually finally started to click towards the end of the season. So it's up to Kubiak to kind of, take these last few games that the Saints had and just get that consistency that, like I was saying, the Saints were inconsistent all year. And then again, they finally clicked at the end of the year, but again, it was too late. They missed the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, again, you got to see how it goes. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's a good hire or a bad hire. I mean, listen, you're working with Kyle Shanahan, so I mean, that has to, that has to be a good thing, right? But we'll see. I mean, but I know Saints fans, they really wanted Carmichael out, just because, again, how rough the season was. So also some other coordinator news. So the Dolphins, they hired Anthony Weaver to be their next defensive coordinator. So he spent the past 2 seasons on the Ravens staff, starting out as the team's defensive lines coach before picking up the associate head coach title this past season. He was a candidate for the Commanders' head coaching job, and now will get his first chance as defensive play caller, as obviously Vic Fangio left to be the Eagles' defensive coordinator. Weaver coached under Bill O'Brien from 2016 to 2020 and had a 7-year playing career with the Ravens and the Texans from 2002 to 2008. So that's a little bit of his background. Obviously talked about Luke Getsky as well. Was there any other ones? Yeah, I talked about the other ones from last week that I see here. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, Kingsbury was kind of the big topic of the segment here. Also, other random news here. So I saw that Le'Veon Bell wants to come back wants to make another comeback to the NFL. I didn't want to do. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to do that as its own segment, but I thought I would just touch upon it here. I mean, he's like, and there's only one team he's going to play for, and he said he would only come back to play with Mike Tomlin. Now, here's the thing. You say you want to come back, but the team also has to want you to come back. I think with the Steelers right now, and also the fact that you've been out of the league for a few years, and the last couple of years you were in the league, I mean, you really didn't have an impact. I think the last team he was on was the Ravens, right? I think that was the last team he was on, because he was on Tampa, he was on the Chiefs. Yeah, he bounced around after Pittsburgh. I mean, the worst thing Le'Veon ever did was hold out for the year, because he came back to the Jets and it just didn't work out. It just did not work out. Well, also Adam Gase didn't want Le'Veon Bell. And then he got hurt, and his career fell off. I mean, he was one of the best running backs in the NFL. But I mean, now, how old is Le'Veon now? Gotta look it up here. I mean, again, he was one of the best running backs in the NFL for a while, but he fell off. No, he's 31. I mean, again, that's old for a running back, but even ESPN posted Le'Veon Bell to attempt NFL return, Steelers reunion. Yeah, I mean, he regrets it. He regrets what he did. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people knew he was going to regret it, because it just did not pan out. And that Steelers offense was special. The Killer Bees. That was a great offense. I mean, I was watching some Antonio Brown highlights recently. I mean, that offense was really good. It's just they when you got to the playoffs, they were playoff games they just did not show up for. Like the Jaguars game. I mean, they lost, what was it, 45-42 the final score of that game was. And then, of course, you got beat up by the Patriots, And then there were some years where they didn't make it. But, they lost to the Ravens one year, the Broncos. Yeah, it just didn't pan out for them. And now he wants to come back. I mean, listen, the Steelers, they got Najee Harris, they got Jalen Warren. I mean, what's the role you're going to have on the team? I mean, unless you want to convert to receiver, if but I mean, I don't see it happening. I don't know. I mean, he says he's going to work out, but I don't know. It's whatever at this point. I mean, he was boxing for a little bit too, right? It's a shame. It's a shame. And again, he regrets it now. But, I mean, listen, I understand, like, players want to get paid, but at the same time, it's like he held out for a whole year. And look what ended up happening. It just it didn't work out for him. So, but I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was interesting. But I don't know if it's going to lead to anything. I mean, again, he's 31. I mean, that's old for a running back. You're not going to see these Frank Gores, these Adrian Petersons, these Marshawn Lynches. That's over. I mean, Derrick Henry's 30. So. I mean, I think he's starting to decline a little bit, but I think he's still got some juice left. It's just you need to have another running back that complements him. He can't just be the guy that's going to take the ball, 25 plus times, 25 carries. You got to have somebody that can balance that out. But yeah, I mean that's just how the game is now. And also again, Le'Veon, after he left the Steelers, I mean it just I mean with the Jets, I mean here and there, but not there was he never really had consistency there. And then of course, then he goes to the Chiefs. I mean, he didn't really do much. The Bucs, I'm surprised to even remember he was on the Bucs. And then same thing with the Ravens. I think he scored a touchdown with the Ravens, but yeah, it just his career flamed out pretty quickly. But again, it all goes back to him holding out. So, but yeah, so. Wow, this segment actually flew by. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about basically everything I talked about. The Kingsbury stuff. Again, going back to that, I mean, the Commanders, in order to get Caleb Williams, I mean, probably gonna have to trade up because it seems like, like what we're gonna talk about in the next segment, that the Bears might be taking a quarterback then, and we might be moving off of Fields. They might be moving off of Fields. So where's Justin Fields now going to end up? If he ends up getting traded. A lot of speculation, and of course we'll talk about all this stuff in the offseason because again, this is it. This is the final game of the year, and then it's now what after that? But obviously there's a lot of stuff to talk about, the draft and free agency coming up, things like that. But yeah, again, we're winding down here. And, but that's what happens with the NFL. It just goes so fast. It goes so fast. And here we are once again. So with that, we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about the Bears keeping the number 1 overall pick, ? Because, again, that was something that I saw that I wanted to touch upon. So that is what we will do when we come back from our final break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.